at him. He can move. Look at
You
that.
asked. You
Move.
asked. I don't move well, but I can
No,
move.
you don't. You don't. I'll be the first one to say that. I'll be the first one to concur with that, David.
It's been a long time since I practiced that Saturday Night Fever.
Oh yeah, yeah. You were. I'm sure you're younger than I am. That was before my time, and you're younger. So okay, listen, David. First off, I have to kind of give my apologies for the title of our presentation today. The title is one that some people might find offensive: "Flying Your Freak Flag." Because my kids were all involved in drama in school, and the drama department were all the kids who flew their freak flag. Which, hey, I love that. It didn't bother me. I want my kids to dance to the beat of their own drummer. That's the name of the game. But in this business, David, in this business, the flag is actually an industry term. And so we are going to, hello, Gail, good to see you. So we are going to discuss the flag for different hotels. And especially now, it's actually kind of apropos because a hotel we're going to be closing on in a week or so. We're going through the franchise agreement, which determines the flag and all the terms involved with the flag. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, David, I'm going to get up and open my office door because it's getting to be stifling in here because it's like 12 degrees outside. Hey, I noticed one of my TikToks this morning, the woman was in Wisconsin and she said it was like 13 degrees this morning in Wisconsin. So
13 degrees below zero, yeah.
Oh, really?
Where we are, yeah, 10 below this morning, 9 below.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
it'll be colder next week.
I'm sleeping in tomorrow morning. I'm not going to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning like I do most mornings. I'm going to sleep in tomorrow. But all right. Anyway, define the flag. And also, what would be very helpful, David, is if you described or detailed the level of flags based upon brand in the industry. All right. So go ahead. Let us have it.
Well, I think first of all, when people talk about a flag, they are talking about a brand, just like you mentioned, Charlie. They're talking about, a specific brand like a Red Roof Inn or a Marriott or something like that. And even within Marriott, there's multiple flags, if you will, or specific brands. So I think basically, there's maybe 4 or 5 major hotel overarching brands, like Choice or, the Hilton brands. But within those brands, there's a huge stratification. So you can go all the way from, I guess they would call it economy or budget lodging at the very bottom strata, if you will, all the way up to, elite level properties that, could be, I don't know, $10,000 a night for a room, right? And so obviously, Choice brand, let's say, okay, they have all these different, they have, ultra luxury, they have luxury, they have, business class, they have, sort of mid-level, and then they have, budget offerings, right? And, one of the big things that's come up over the last 10, 15 years is all these brands are introducing new extended stay brands. That became kind of a thing 15 years ago, the extended stay hotel brand 20 years ago. And now you've even got differentiation between extended stays. So, a company might have a business class extended stay, and they might have, an economy extended stay. So you're going to have all these different levels. And that's what they call each brand a flag, essentially.
Yeah. And I guess it's the equivalent in the multifamily industry of classes of property: your A class, your B class, your C class, your D class, and even maybe some variations on those classes as well. Because, like you said, extended stay versus overnight. Like, how is it viewed? And you sent me an email of a multifamily. Was it a a multifamily being converted to a hotel? Was that
Yes,
what?
yes,
Yeah.
it was, which
So
is
what is that all about?
opposite of typical, well, I think in that particular situation, and it's situation by situation, I believe that that particular property was located very close to a large healthcare facility, a hospital with a healthcare facility. And what they were doing is they were taking essentially like an A minus class apartment building and turning it into, a very high end luxury extended stay property. Now, it
Hmm.
sounded like maybe they were even doing a certain amount of, you know, what they might call a hybrid occupancy, where, they were actually going to have um, some apartments in there. So there might be some people with, 30-day leases or even 1 year leases, but a lot of the units were going to be available night by night. They were going to be furnished units night by night.
I wonder if, obviously, if you're doing that type of a almost like a reverse conversion, there's not going to be any issue with the parking requirements because that's going to be, the multifamily is going to have more parking spaces than the hotel. But what about the zoning? Do you think there would be issues? We always have issues when we're trying to get the property rezoned as multifamily. I wonder, would they have to go through the same issues to go from multifamily to hotel?
It really depends on the zoning, and it depends on kind of where they are in the city, right? Because obviously zoning is a whole nother topic we could spend, hours and hours
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
But basically, if they're in that area where they're close to a hospital, maybe they're on near a main road. And I haven't researched that particular project to any depth, but let's just say they are, then it could be very likely that they could have, some type of commercial residential overlay zoning, right, for high density residential along with commercial. In
right.
that case, it probably wouldn't be too much of a stretch to move, to a hotel property in that area. The other thing that tends to bias the localities that sometimes we see as a reverse bias in our situation is if you're moving to a hotel, that's going to probably increase the revenue for the city because you're going to have, these tourism taxes on those hotel rooms, right? Which are typically, first of all, as an apartment, generally speaking, you don't have um, sales tax, right?
Right.
So you get past that issue. And then second of all, obviously you're not going to have the tourism tax, but if you bring, that mixed use back in or a purely hotel use, I mean, you can generate an awful lot of taxes because some localities, the tax rates for hotel rooms might be 15 to 20% a night.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. So, all right, now let me ask you about what is it that is the hottest type of property, type of flag right now? Are you seeing hotels being built that are more one type than another? What's a take on hotel dwellers right now?
Are you talking about like new construction trends in the market
I
or?
say trends. Yeah, I'm talking about trends. Like what are they building now? And the point of my question is, if we are looking to really start to always go after hotel conversions as an alternative or as an opportunity, uh, 10, 20 years from now, when properties being built today are becoming obsolete, will they become great candidates for conversion because of the way that they were constructed today?
A chunk of them will for sure. I think. I mean, you've got two things that are happening in the hotel space that I can see right now. First of all, just like multifamily, the propensity of new hotels being built are on the upper scale. They're resort type communities or they're upscale hotels. But the other trend in the hotel industry that's really big is that they're building a lot more extended stay versus traditional nightly hotels. And those extended stay properties are being built actually in two classifications. They're actually being built in the upper strata and they're being built in the economy strata as well because there's just so much demand. I think there's just our society has become just a more fluid and flexible society. And I mean, we've talked about this before, but with the trend of this, the single person households, right? So many people who are a household in and of themselves, those people have a lot more flexibility, and some of them do, jobs like where they're traveling all the time, right? And maybe they're here for a month, they're there for a month, whatever. So they need this type of, accommodation, right? Because they're certainly not going to rent an apartment or buy a house when they're going to be there, 1 to 6 months, right? So we are seeing a lot of new extended stay hotels being built, and those properties. I mean, multifamily, as long as you maintain the multifamily, it tends to track rents, right? And so it keeps going up in value as long as the rents keep going up in value. Hotels are a little different because hotels, even if you maintain them, if they become dated, they may struggle to maintain those RevPARs, hitting those, maybe they come out new and they can do $129 a night, but when they're 10 years old, and this is 10 years later, right? They might only be getting $89 a night, which might be the equivalent of $69 or $79, inflation adjusted, right?
Right.
So they aren't built forever. I mean, these hotels do become obsolete, unlike multifamily, which generally the only place you're going to see multifamily become obsolete is someplace where they're actually losing population, like what happened in Detroit or Cleveland years ago.
Yeah, and that's interesting though. You wonder if these hoteliers are building these long-term stays or extended stay hotels with the idea that they're going to sell them at some point to a multifamily operator, and that they've opened up a new market for the sale of their property. And you're right. When it's making 129 bucks a night today, 10 years from now, it's down to 89, while the labor and the utility and taxes have all skyrocketed over that 10-year period. You're just not making any money.
That's right.
Yeah. And I tell you talk about the two different levels of extended stay. I stayed in one up in North Conway, New Hampshire, a few months back. I believe it was a Marriott. I don't remember, maybe Spring Hill Suites or something like that. I don't remember the exact name of the brand, but man, when I walked into that unit, I thought I was in a Class A 1-bedroom apartment. It was a full kitchen, a separated bedroom, a beautiful bathroom. It was just a really nice property. I thought to myself, oh, this would be a slam dunk for a conversion. This would be no problem. So that's that 10 years from now, I might be buying that property. We'll see. Let me see what Gail's question is here. So I see office buildings being converted to multifamily in the future, depending upon its structure and location. Another opportunity. Yeah, but the problem, and Gail, we've been looking at this as well. And one of the things that we look at in these properties is a light lift for conversion. And what I mean by that is it's got sprinklers, it's got in-place kitchenettes, and electrical panels in all the units. You have those three things, you've got a great deal. Now, if you look at an office building, just think about the way most office buildings are constructed. They're square, at least, Class A office buildings around here, 2 stories square. Everybody wants a window in their house. So you've got to have a center location. The elevators are coming up the center of the building. You've got to have units such that they start in the middle and they reach all the way back to the windows, and that's a long, narrow apartment that can be problematic. Besides that, usually the floors have concrete between them, and to put in a plumbing or all your HVAC equipment that you would need for every individual space, that can get pretty costly. So that's offices. Everybody thought, oh yeah, this would be great. Look at the locations; they're fantastic. Yeah, but the cost of conversion is going to kill the deal. David, have you seen any of those that you can really claim are great deals?
Only honestly, probably San Francisco, just because the market for office is so depressed, right? You're buying the building at 15-20 cents on the dollar of what it sold for 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It has to be basically those types of conversions, especially if they're high rise. You're looking at Miami, you're looking at New York, you're looking at San Francisco, maybe LA. it has to be like A plus plus downtown, super expensive location to justify the cost. Because yeah, I mean, I've looked at some of these deals. Like there was one they were doing in, I think it was downtown Memphis. It was a really good location in downtown Memphis, and they had got the building for very very cheap. I think it was, I don't know, $30 a square foot or something insanely cheap. But then their unit cost was going to be, I don't know, $297,000 for the renovation cost of each unit. So, I mean, you better be able to get $3,500 a month for those units then.
Yeah. Airbnb has had a huge impact on the hotel industry. Yeah, exactly. But I think that they may be pivoting. I think there's really been a saturation of Airbnb. I think the hotels are starting to pivot. They're starting to see some really bad, Yelp reviews on Airbnb, and they're starting to take advantage of it from a marketing standpoint. My wife would always stay at an Airbnb. I hated staying in an Airbnb unless it was like I had the whole house, and the thing got good reviews. Like I stayed at a house in Ireland the time I was there, and it was beautiful. It was great. But I just think about the security. That's my biggest concern. These stories of people walking in on you in your Airbnb, and I suppose it could happen in the hotel business too. But that's just always been my take on Airbnbs. But that's just me. Anyway, David, the reason why I picked this topic for you and me to talk about today was had to do with the contracting of the flags. And what I mean by that is, when we look at a conversion, one of the things we look at is, does it currently have a flag? And, what we're finding out through as we acquire more and more hotels, that also has a play in how the deal can be financed as well. So, what's the difference between buying with the intention of converting an independent hotel and one that is currently flagged?
Well, I think the one that's currently flagged obviously is controlled by a contract that has, a termination clause in it, right? And so that tied to that termination clause is typically something called liquidated damages
Yeah.
that are basically to compensate the franchisor if the franchisee wants to leave early, because I mean the franchisor believes that they're entitled to damages because they spend X amount of money up front to get you into the franchise, right? And obviously they spend money making sure that you're compliant with the franchise requirements, and they do a lot of marketing of their brand, and they want to protect their brand, right? So typically these liquidated damages, depending upon the level of the flag, in other words, is it an economy hotel, is it a luxury hotel, can vary widely, but oftentimes they're linked to like revenue, and it's a certain percentage of revenue because it links back to what they call their royalty and marketing fees, and they want to basically be compensated for all those fees, and basically the way they do it is, if you're 5 years or more away from your termination date, you may have to pay them for up to 5 years of that lost revenue, which could be 8%. So, if you got $1 million of revenue, which isn't a tremendous amount for hotels. Hotels crank revenue. They're generally not extremely high, gross margins, but they tend to crank a lot of revenue. So $1 million is a pretty modest hotel. And you could end up with, 8% per year times 5 years, quick math, $40,000. I'm sorry, $400,000 in termination fees, which on a hotel that generates $1 million a year is a pretty steep, hill to get over.
Yeah. It's when you look at this from a conversion standpoint, but what you also have to look at it from a financing standpoint. So how do you approach the lenders? You're going to buy this conversion opportunity and it's got a flag on it. That's got to be a huge roadblock for a bank if they're looking to fund your conversion. But it also, if you're looking to buy the property with the flag in place, a conversion would have an issue with the existing lender as well. I mean, or like an SBA loan. So how would you work around those issues?
I think it's case by case. I mean, I guess in one case, I would say, you know, if you're looking to convert right away and you think you can get the zoning done, I mean, we haven't even talked about how zoning ties into all that too much, but if you can get the rezoning done and you can get the conversion moving quickly, then odds are you're going to have to go to a specialty lender like a bridge lender who basically understands these scenarios because they've worked with them before, right? So, I mean, the bridge lender, of course, is going to require you to take into account, you know, the costs of getting that, you know, rezoning and getting rid of that flag, whatever those liquidated damages are. And obviously all this stuff is negotiable. It gets negotiated on each contract, but a bridge lender is going to be more expensive. So, you know, that's pretty much, you know, the way you would have to do it most of the time in those cases. The other way you could maybe do it is if you are fortunate enough that, let's say, the current lender is somebody who really likes that property, you know, and they're like maybe a smaller bank, right? A community bank. Maybe you can convince them of the value of the property if they like the location and all that. And you could maybe get them to work with you and provide you with, you know, some type of a purchase plus construction, you know, a redevelopment loan of some kind. That's going to be the least expensive way to get it. The only other way that we, you know, talked about before is if you're going to operate the property as a hotel for a period of time because the zoning may take a long time, or, you know, you're positioned to be able to do the conversion of the physical building while you're still a hotel, then you could consider that option of, you know, getting an SBA loan. But I mean, obviously there's the most common ones are, you know, SBA 504s and SBA 7As. And these types of loans are not generally designed for flips, right? In other words, if you're coming in and you're going to be a hotel for 9 months, that makes no sense because you can't retain that loan once you become a multifamily, right? That's not what the SBA lends on. If you tried to, you know, slide that through, that would actually be considered, you know, a fraudulent type of activity. So you would never want to do that, right? I mean, you're going to operate as a hotel as long as, you know, you're going to keep that loan as long as you're a hotel. When you're ready to flip the switch and become multifamily, you're going to refinance out of that. But generally speaking, there are pretty steep prepayment penalties on these loans. You know, the 7A is cheaper than the 504 because the 504 is really designed to be like a 30-year loan. And so the 7A has a step down 531. So basically, you know, 5% the first year, 3% the second year, 1% the third year. And that's basically because the investors in these, you know, they basically, you know, resell them into the market, right? They sell them into tranches of paper, kind of like, you know, the things that happened back in 2008 that got the housing market in trouble. But that's what they do. They turn it into commercial loan paper. And so they don't want people flipping these loans. You know, they want them to stay in these loans for a long period of time. But if you're, you know, the cost differential, it's worth it to take out one of these loans for 2 or 3 years, right? If that's the process time on your conversion.
Mm-hmm. Let me run through a bunch of sections in a typical franchise agreement, and let's just talk about these from the context of you being an owner operator of a current franchise yourself. Like these are some of the things that you have to live under when you're under a flag. So obviously, the duties of the franchisor and the duties of the franchisee. They come along and they're going to tell you what they're going to do for you. What are some of the things that make a buying into a franchise beneficial in the hotel space?
Well, I think it's always the trade-offs. It's the plus money versus the minus money, right? And on the plus money side, that's where, you know, it depends a lot on the flag, right? It depends a lot on where you're positioned in the strata. I mean, one of the key things, I mean, at least as far as what the franchisors will try to sell you on, and some it is very true, and others it may not be quite as true, but they will provide you with brand standards, which gives you an instant reputation, kind of like, you know, people go to, say, some people really like Applebee's restaurant, and they just know that if they go to an Applebee's in New Jersey or they go to an Applebee's in California, it should be the same quality of food, right? that's what they're establishing, the brand standard, right? They're on the downside, you have to comply with those standards, and sometimes they can be very expensive. But on the upside, that standard and that nationwide marketing that they do for that brand standard should equate to additional business for you. Another one is the loyalty programs. A lot of them will talk about how loyal their customers are to their loyalty programs, right? So maybe somebody says, I always go to Choice Brands because I really love Choice's loyalty program. So whether, they're going to stay at an upscale hotel or they're going to stay at an economy hotel, they stay in a Choice brand, right? So that's, those are a couple of the big benefits. Some of the other benefits that they provide is they have very in-depth standards. They have very in-depth training. They've pre-vetted the operating software. So basically, when you come into these things, you don't have to make a lot of decisions. You don't have to figure out, oh, what software am I going to use? Oh, how am I going to staff my hotel? How am I going to train my employees? What am I going to do with my payroll? What credit card processing systems am I going to use? They have it all laid out there for you, down to like, we're going to have 5 pillows on the bed. They're going to be this size pillow. The pillow cover is going to have, this thread count. You just don't have to figure those things out.
You mentioned that thing about the loyalty points, but doesn't that impact your bottom line? Because like if somebody comes into your unit, your hotel, and uses reward points that they've been gathering from some other hotel, doesn't that hit your bottom line?
Yes and no. The way it works is that you actually get compensated for that stay, but you don't generally get compensated at, say, the same level you would get for a standard guest walking in the hotel, right? Okay. You're compensated at a discounted level, essentially. But what the franchisor will, kind of their stick on that or whatever is that, hey, that room would have sat empty otherwise. So, you should be glad that, these people came in, right? Because it's increasing your revenue. You are getting compensated for it, and you're still making money off that room. Maybe not as much as you would have if you'd have had just a plain guest walk in. I think where it becomes an issue is if you're running a hotel that runs really high occupancy, and now all of a sudden you've got rooms that are, would have been sold to full paying customers, and now they're being sold to loyalty customers, right, preventing that full paying customer to come in. That would be considered to be, a loss to lease, if you want to use the
right, exactly,
department term.
All right. So explain to me this whole concept, and I see it here, called proprietary marks. And I think that has to do with all the little things that say the name of the franchise that you are required to have around the hotel. How does that work?
Well, I think even down to obviously color schemes, symbols, icons, logos, like uniforms. All that stuff is branded, right? And those are a lot of those things are considered marks, proprietary marks. It could be even possible that, they could have a proprietary mark and maybe they serve some kind of special cinnamon coffee or something. I don't know, but yeah, there's definitely like specific ways that the hotels operate, to the point where, I think at one time when we were looking at deflagging something, there was even some discussion that, well, the exterior is going to need to be, repainted somehow because the color scheme is a proprietary mark, because the door color is this and the trim color is that and the body of the building is this brand if you don't repaint something.
Okay, last question, and this is giving a little bit of inside baseball here for everyone. So if you have any questions, go ahead. I see Gail's been very active. I hope she's going to be that way in my cohort program. That's going to be great. But here's the thing, David. We are buying this hotel. Now, when we bought it, you look at the purchase and sale contract, it clearly states we're not getting the flag. As a matter of fact, the flag is going to be removed as a condition of sale. And as time has gone on, because of a whole lot of reasons, we're going to have a flag, the flag, their flag, on this property while we're converting it. So here we are, originally thought we're buying an independent hotel. Now we're buying a flagged hotel. How is the transition from not owning the property to owning the property? How is that transition going to go to get us to hit all those proprietary marks, to get the reservation system in place, to turn this thing really into that brand's flag on day one?
I mean, I think some of the things, there's pluses and minuses to this, right? If you're going to become an independent hotel overnight, you're going to have to bring in all new systems, right? You're going to have to bring in a new, your own computer software. You're going to have to bring in your own payment processing system. You're going to have to bring in all these, things that you're going to have to make decisions on. And obviously you're not going to stay with their system because their system is going to get shut down and moved out immediately. So it's going to be a little more, bumpy that transition day, right? Right now, basically all we have to do is sign some paperwork and there's a cutover, right? It's like, okay, the money went into this bank account. Now it's going to go to this bank account, right? And obviously, staffing is one issue that, you have to deal with. But basically the staffing a lot of times really depends on, the individual property as opposed to corporate. Corporate doesn't provide staffing to these hotels. But the one thing that we are going to have to do now that we wouldn't have had to do before is we're going to have to comply with brand standards. And we have a bunch of rooms that are quote unquote out of order, and we're going to have to spend money to get those rooms back in order. Now, would we have spent that money to do that work anyway? For a large part, yes, because, we are going to, do those upgrades, and we're just going to basically, meet the brand standard with the upgrade that we were planning to do anyway. But, some things like maybe we end up having to buy a little bit more furniture than we want long term, right? Because maybe long term we're going to have 50% furnished units when this thing's an apartment building in 3 years or whatever it ends up being, right? But, that's just one of those things. And also, I guess, the big one is how much benefit are we going to gain from that corporate franchise contract because of the way it's structured? Ours is sort of a unique structure.
Absolutely.
And so there's a few things in that contract that are different than a traditional, franchise agreement with that particular brand. So, but we are still going to have to pay, discounted but still significant franchise fees, right? Royalty fees, marketing fees, software license fees, all those types of things, right? And so there are some additional costs, and the benefits because of our situation may be a little bit limited, or a little bit less than would be traditional for that franchise agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people that are wondering what David cryptically was talking about as far as why ours is so unique, it's really because it's kind of on essentially, and I use this term because multifamily people would understand it, is essentially our franchise contract is almost on a month-to-month basis. But we can keep it for 10 years. So that kind of gives us a lot of leeway in the space. So any closing comments, David, about flags, freak flags?
I guess if I was to give my plug for flags, I mean, I think that generally speaking, if I was to ever actually run a hotel and not a multifamily, in other words, a permanent traditional hotel, I would say go up the ladder as far as you can. I think the better of a flag that you get, the more value it actually has to have the flag.
I agree. I mean, just in the amount of rents that the people are paying, that makes a huge difference. I mean, you just think about it, David. What does the labor cost in a Ritz-Carlton look like compared to the labor cost in a Best Western, as far as the maid staff?
Well, I think first of all, let's maybe let's make three classifications as long as we're having this discussion. The Ritz-Carlton, the Best Western, and the Motel 6.
Okay.
All right. So generally
Hey,
speaking,
let me just say something, David, which is kind of always amazed me about your knowledge here is that you know all the different rankings of hotels, and you know within the Marriott family what their flags are and which ones are better than the other ones. And whenever you say like, "Oh, this one's a Marriott," and this, I am amazed at how well you know those brands and where they fall on the totem pole of value within the family. So, when you say Best Western, oh, I would, isn't that like one of the lesser value
no,
properties?
Best Western's a mid-scale.
It
And
is
and
okay.
and when
See,
you
I didn't
say
even know
Best
that.
Western, I mean, Best Western actually does have some upscale products. They have like some elite products, you know.
Okay, well, what's okay?
But
What's
a standard Best Western is a mid-scale product,
what is it?
a mid-scale product, a mid-tier
Well,
product.
no, what's the name of it? Oh, the whole Best
The
Western
Best
brand.
West, a standard Best Western is a mid-scale product. So if you go to some place and it's just called a Best Western, it's not a Best Western Plus, it's not a Best Western Elite, it's not, it's just a Best Western,
Okay,
you know, and that would be a mid-scale product. And
yeah,
I think are there differences in labor costs? There are differences in labor costs, but are those differences in labor costs equal to the differences in the nightly rates? No, not even close.
right,
I mean, at the Ritz Carlton, you're 279 a night, right? At the Best Western, you're 129 a night.
right.
The
But the
Motel
labor
6,
cost,
at the Motel 6, you're 69 a night. Okay. So it's almost like you can almost like double the price as you go up each of those levels.
right,
Now, with the staffing, the Ritz Carlton, they want the best staff, right? So they are going to offer the best pay packages, but their pay package might cost them 20% more than the Best Western when they're getting 80% more per night on the rooms.
exactly. Yeah,
And the same would be true if you stepped from the Motel 6 might be paying $12 a night for maids and no benefits, and they're all part time. The the Best Western might be paying $15 an hour, and they get holiday pay, and maybe a couple of them are full time, like maybe they have a housekeeping manager is full time or something like that. At the Ritz Carlton, they may be paying $17 an hour, and you get 2 weeks of paid vacation a year, and maybe even some kind of low level health care plan, right? So that's just to attract a certain level of employee, right? Because the people who clean rooms at the Motel 6, probably, unfortunately, the reality is they would not be of the caliber of the people who handle that function at the Ritz Carlton.
right. But like you said, the differential from a pay standpoint may only be 20%. Now, here's what people need to understand is that these hotels are valued on a multiple of RevPAR,
On a multiple of revenue,
multiple of revenue, right? Okay. And so
just gross
therefore,
revenue. I mean,
and so therefore,
RevPAR ties into it. Obviously, a much higher
right,
RevPAR is going to imply a higher revenue.
exactly. That's what I was referring to. But here's the thing, David. The revenue that they're multiplying by to get the value of the property doesn't take into consideration the expenses. So it's not the net profit that's showing up, it's the revenue that's valuing that property. And so therefore, who cares what you're paying your staff? We're getting a whole lot more money than you are, and therefore our property is so much more valuable. It's a lot like using the gross rent multiplier on a multifamily, as opposed to using the net operating income.
It's kind of the opposite of what you would intuitively think, right?
Exactly.
It's basically in multifamily, you can have two buildings sitting next to each other, and they might be identical buildings, but one is run way better than the other and is generating twice the NOI. That thing is going to sell for twice the price because you're buying the stream of cash flow, which makes perfect sense to me, right? In the hotel industry, you could have two hotels sitting right next to each other. One of them is making, $500,000 in EBITDA a year, and the other one's making essentially zero. But they both are generating $4 million a year in revenue. And the price difference between the two will be relatively small because most of that price is attributed to that, a multiple of revenue. So it doesn't make sense to me that, you could have a hotel that's making nothing and a hotel that's making pretty good money, and the two, sell for a similar price.
Yeah.
And I mean, theoretically, you could have a situation where the one that's making no money sells for more than the one that's making $500,000 a year if the one that's making no money is impeccably maintained and looks beautiful, has no deferred maintenance.
Exactly. So, all right, David, thank you once again for helping us out. The whole thing is I had all my notes right here in the Hometown Studios franchise agreement, and that's where I was drawing my questions from.
I know that thing all too well now.
I know you do. I saw your notes from the weekend, and I appreciated them. So, folks, here's a schedule for this week. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I have a webinar at 7 p.m. Where I'm going to be talking about the upcoming multifamily cohort program that we're rolling out, which is already filling up, and I'm so excited about it. This is going to be great. And then we're also going to be having a follow-up webinar on Saturday at noon. All of these times are Eastern times. And so if you're interested, shoot me an email or shoot Molly an email. I'll put, maybe Molly can, I'm going to type, there she is, right there, Multifamily OS. Oh, as a matter of fact, to register for the event, you can just go to multifamilyos.com, and little banner will pop up. You can go ahead and register for the webinar on Wednesday. And also, if you want to just attend the one on Saturday, that's fine as well. They're both going to be live. I'm going to be speaking like I did the other night. Had a great talk at the Boston RIA. Signed up about a bunch of people who are coming on board starting January 22nd. So, and then also on Thursday, we'll have another follow-up, another YouTube live here at 4 p.m. So make sure you're registered for that one. If you're already on our list, you'll get an invite to that. And we will see you on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, if you want to get enough of them. Yeah, Gail, I'm telling you, Gail,
you're working a Saturday.
What's that, David?
You're working a Saturday?
Yeah,
I think you shut her down at like 3 o'clock.
Well, it's the holiday Saturday too. So it's and I'm going away this weekend. I got to get out of Dodge. Just I'm going to the ice castles, David.
Ooh,
I know. Wow. Yeah, it's me doing all of these New Hampshire things that I've never done before in my life, and I'm finally doing them.
Well, we're starting to have the weather this year where ice castles is looking like a possibility through a lot of the country.
Yeah, you're right, and it looks pretty good now. So yeah, that's what we're doing, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to do that. But before I leave and get out of Dodge, I'm going to be going to do the webinar on Saturday. It's a lot of fun. And, people learn a ton, and I get the chance to share about this cohort program, which I'm so excited about. I've already got a great group of people signing up. I think it's going to be fantastic. So that's it. And thank you, David, for coming again, and we will see you soon.
Thanks. Have a great week.
See you, everybody.